Welcome back to my channel. I'm your host, Tamara Johnson, and you're watching A Minute with Mom TV. I'm so glad that you clicked on this video and that you decided to come spend some time with me today. I want to welcome you to this space. If you're new, welcome. Make yourself comfortable, make yourself at home. I want to tell you that it is my privilege and my honor to encourage, empower, and uplift you as you do life and as we do life together. And so I'm so very glad to have you in this space. Now, before we get into today's video, there's a few things that I want to share with you. If you have not watched the first part of this topic of discussion, I want for you to go ahead and save this video to your watch later and go watch the first one. Otherwise, you might be a little bit lost in terms of what we're talking about. So this will be a part 2 of my previous video, which was boundaries. And so, yeah, go do that and then meet me back here. If you have watched Boundaries Part 1, you're in the right place. We're going to pick up where we left off. And the last thing that I need you to do before we get into it is, if you haven't subscribed yet, this would be the time to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And while you hit that button, go ahead and hit the notification bell as well so that you can be aware of when I upload my video. All right. So let's chop it up. We talked about boundaries in the first video. We talked about the necessity of boundaries. We talked about what a boundary is, and we talked about why we need them in our lives. So in today's video, I want to talk to you about boundaries in kind of like the frame of a house. So I want you to think of boundaries as your house. And just like with your regular house, when people come to visit, there are certain things that happen when somebody is at your door. And so I want to talk to you about boundaries and present it in a way as if someone is coming to your door for the first time, or maybe there's someone that comes to your house regularly. But the point of the matter is that within your house there are certain rooms within your house that you allow company to go in, and there's certain rooms that are only meant for certain people, and there's certain rooms that you keep the door closed because you don't want anybody in there. So for the sake of this discussion, I want you to think about boundaries in terms of your house. Last time we thought about boundaries in terms of a piece of land and your property line. Now we're talking about the house. So how this is going to work for this video, I'm kind of excited about it because it's a different way of thinking about boundaries that I think will make sense to a lot of you who are unfamiliar with boundaries, or you're just learning about boundaries. It'll help make things a little easier for you to understand. Each room in the house will be a different boundary or territory. And we're going to start from the front door all the way to like the family room, okay? Because the bedroom, that's a different conversation. That's a different video, different topic for a different day. So we're going to stop at the family room. So let's get We're going to start with the front door. This is your house. This is your boundary. What do you do when someone rings your doorbell or knocks on your door? The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to want to know who is at the door. And so in relationship, in boundaries, you have the front door stage of relationship. And in this stage of relationship, you're finding out who this person is. So you could be meeting them for the first time. You're finding out basic information, their name, where they're from, what they do, just background information that's kind of surface level. And you're just meeting this person for the first time. The reason that you want to pay attention here is because this is also the stage that you're going to find out what is their reason for showing up in your life. Why are they there? Is it a meeting in passing? Is it through school? Is it through work? This kind of sets the tone for how you proceed moving forward with this encounter. This will determine if you're going to let them into your house or not. So we meet people every day on a regular basis, but not everybody gets the privilege of coming into our house. So the front door serves the purpose of an introduction. It lets you know who's at the door, why they're there, and if this is somebody that you want to allow into your space. The next room that we would typically allow people into in our homes is the foyer. Well, what is the foyer for? If you have a house with a foyer, then the foyer is kind of the place where you let people in and they can come into your house, but Usually, depending on the size of your house or the size of your foyer, there may be a little chair in the foyer or a bench of some sort or a resting place of something. The foyer serves the purpose of letting the person hang out there without coming into the actual interior of your house. And so this can be a very useful boundary for you if you've met someone and you are still getting to know them. You know why they're there, but you're not sure if you want them in the rest of your house. So you ask them to wait in the foyer. So the foyer could be like your waiting area, like a waiting room of some sort. This level of relationship, you're still having small talk. This is still very surface level conversation. It's conversation that happens in passing. You're still gathering background information on this person. You're finding out a little bit more detail. So you're going beyond what their name is. You're going beyond why they're there. They may share certain details of their life that you either will find interesting and want to know more about, or they're sharing things with you that you need to know because you guys are sharing the same space and maybe you're working together, maybe you're, at school together or at work together. I like to call this um, like water cooler conversation. So you're establishing a common ground with the person. So the conversation at this stage of relationship building would be very light, very surface level, but you're still sharing some little tidbits about yourself and you're learning little tidbits about the person that you're engaging with. That is what the foyer is for. The third area would be the living room. Here is where it starts to get a little bit more serious. Here is where there's an investment that's starting to be placed on the relationship. Because if you think about a living room, in your house. A living room, there's sofas in there, there's a coffee table in there, perhaps. There's, there may be some form of entertainment. It's more of a relaxed area. And if you live in a house that has a formal living room, then this is where it's like, yeah, I'm still getting to know you. This is where the company comes to sit and you entertain people, but you still close off the rest of your house. This would be the room. Okay, I'm going to really date myself here. This would be the room that has the plastic on the sofa. And if you're my age group, you already know what I'm talking about. The fancy living room, the formal living room, the front room that no one is allowed to sit on that sofa. That room stays untouched until it's Christmas time or somebody's birthday or there's a reason to entertain in that room. That is not a room that you sit in every single day. It's nicely decorated and it's like on display. Okay. So in the living room, what happens in the living room? You're more intentional in the living room because you're still getting to know this person. So you may offer a little bit more information about yourself. You may be a little bit more forthcoming with details about your life that you wouldn't otherwise share with someone if they were at the front door or in the foyer. This is where in the part of the relationship where you're willing to invest some time. So you may go on a lunch date or meet up for coffee or something like that. You're taking the intention and the time to really sit down and talk with the person that you're engaging with and you're getting to know them. This is also the area and the time where you want to introduce your boundaries. This is the time where you're really letting people know who you are and what you're about, but you're also asking questions of them to find out who they are and what they're about. So there's a deep exchange at this level where you're sharing things about yourself like, hey, I don't smoke, I don't drink, or the type of movies that you like to be watch. The time and the space where you find out what you like about this person, what this person likes about you, any shared common interests that you have, things that they dislike. You're gathering a ton of information at this time, and you're also deciding if you want to pursue the relationship any further. At this point, I would tell you, take it slow. I would say to you, don't rush beyond this point because here's the thing. Sometimes we meet people who are very energetic. You are drawn to them. You seem to hit it off and it goes hot and fast. And you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to spend as much time with this person as possible. I love hanging around them. I love their energy, and it's always a good time. But there's a little bit of a caution here in this phase because there is a thing called, how can I say this? It's like there's a haze over the relationship. So at this stage in the relationship, and this is something that is true for all of us, we're putting our best foot forward at this stage of relationship building. We are truly showcasing our best selves. We're not necessarily showing people our flaws at this point. We want them to see the best sides of us. And so we come very polished, very clean, and very, you know, presentable. And so sometimes in relationships, when you go too fast and you rush this moment, there's certain context clues about the person that you may miss because you're having such a good time. I hope that I'm making sense to you here. So the reason why I'm saying that you should kind of just go slow yourself down a little bit. It's great to get to know people. It's great to have a good time with people. It's great to feel that connection. And most times we're not wrong about the connection. However, I have experienced in my life so many different instances where I rushed through this part of relationship building, and there were certain red flags or yellow flags that I saw, but I dismissed because I was having a good time and also because I wasn't firm on my boundaries. So, what would that look like? Okay, I'll give you a prime example. I remember working on a job and hitting it off with one of my coworkers, and she became like my work bestie. And we started hanging out outside of work. We would go on our lunch break together. She would come over to my house for dinner, and we were just building this friendship and having a great time. One of the things that I noticed early in the relationship, and I mean early, in passing, in listening to her have conversations with her spouse, she would tell little white lies, and it would sound something like this. We would be at work, sitting in the car, debriefing our day. You know, usually we were ranting about patients, seeing patients and rude patients and whatnot, and just kind of decompressing from the day because we worked in a doctor's office and it was very stressful. Okay. And so we would be sitting in the car talking and just decompressing, and her spouse would call and she would say things like, yeah, I'm driving on the way right now, I'm stuck in traffic. And I would be sitting there like, wait a minute, no you're not, we're still in the parking lot, what are you doing? And she would tell little white lies like that to her spouse. Now let me say this, I'm not asking any questions at that moment because I'm still getting to know her and I don't know what her home life is. So I'm minding my business, but I'm also taking a mental note of, why did she lie about that? Why couldn't she just say, I'm sitting in the parking lot talking to a coworker? I it was not my place at that time to question her about that, but it is something that I did take note of. And I kind of just passed it off because, again, I still was getting to know her. I didn't know her that well, and I didn't know her well enough to even call her on it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to mind my business because that's married folk business, and I'm going to stay out of it because I don't know her like that. Here's where I made the mistake. So it was great that I noticed the behavior, but what I failed to actually pay attention to was that was a character clue. That moment of seeing her, and I will have to say that these types of instances happened repeatedly over the course of me getting to know her. So while I might have been in the living room stage with her, she was actually showing me who she was. And she was giving me indicators of her character, in that this is someone who is not truthful. She is not always truthful. She is not always forthcoming. And so if she could do that with her husband, it is safe enough for me to assume that she doesn't only just do it with her husband, but she does it with other people in her life as well. And that's the clue that just completely went over my head. So I continue on with the friendship, and then that inevitable moment comes when, can you guess? Yes. Now I'm on the receiving end of some of those white lies. And I have to tell you that it was very painful because by this point, I had moved her beyond the living room and I allowed her into the kitchen, which is the heart space. Okay. Everybody knows that they say the saying is that the kitchen is the heart of the home. And so in the kitchen, you are invested, you are emotionally invested in the relationship, whether it is a platonic friendship or a romantic relationship. By the time you get to the kitchen, you have made an investment. You have decided that this person means something to you. They have value. They have a level of significance in your life, okay? And you're enjoying building relationship and connection with this individual. And so I had rushed past the living room because I think what happened in that instance is because we worked so closely together. I saw her 5 days a week. We cried together at work on stressful days. We prayed together at work on stressful days. So there were certain details about our lives that kind of crossed paths. And she began to share certain things of her life with me, and I began to share certain things of my life with her. And so we have this connection, but really and truly, the main commonality in that connection was that we worked together. And so it's kind of like when you're seeing someone day in, day out, whether it be at work or whether it be at school, it's very easy to go from one phase of friendship to the next when you're constantly in the same environment, experiencing the same things and sharing the same woes and celebrating the same moments of celebration. You know what I'm saying? And so for me, the way my heart is wired, I tend to attach to people very quickly. This is something that I've had to learn about myself over the years. And in that case, this I was probably like in my mid to late 30s when this happened. And in that case, I was still kind of peeling back my own layers and figuring out who I was as an individual. And that's something that I wasn't aware of at the time. But I knew that I had made that emotional investment in the friendship. And so here comes the inevitable day when she said she was going to be there for me in a way that I really needed her in that moment. And she completely flaked on me. Like she left me hanging, like in the wind, disappearing act, gone, poof, bye, non existent. No phone call, no text. And I had been texting day, all throughout the day. Hey, are you going to be able to make it? Are you going to be able to make it? Are you going to be here? I really need your help. And not a word. So then when I finally get a hold of her, she tells me an excuse that wasn't actually the truth. And this is when it all came flooding back to me, all of the different moments when I would see her do these things. And I was hurt. I was actually crushed. And I was asking myself, why would she do this? How could she do this to me? Like, I thought that was my girl. I thought, oh my gosh, here's the thing. Maya Angelou has a quote that says, when people show you who they are, believe them. She had been showing me who she was the entire time. I didn't believe it. I actually didn't believe, even though I saw her displaying this behavior with her spouse and everyone else, because we were having such a great time in the relationship. And there were other things that she would share with me that gave me a sense of false security within the friendship that, oh no, she wouldn't do that to me until she did. And so this is why I'm saying to you, I know that was a very long explanation, but I want to give you real time, real examples of how that could look in your life. And so this is why you take your time getting to know people. I'm not saying that you should go in there with walls up. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying you do need to guard your heart. And the Bible does tell us that we should guard our heart with all diligence. Why? Because out of it flow the issues of life. And so when we're just barreling through life and just getting to know people and just sharing ourselves and giving of ourselves and accepting people into our lives without doing our due diligence to pay attention to the cautionary flags, especially the red ones. This is how we open up ourselves to hurt, unnecessary hurt. Because had I slowed myself down just a little bit and had I paid more attention to my gut and my discernment that told me, hey, that's not cool that she does that, but I dismissed it, then now I open myself up to receiving the same treatment. So I talked about the kitchen. The kitchen, we're still in the kitchen. So I want to tell you some more things about the kitchen. So the foyer, the front door, the foyer, and the living room, those are kind of self explanatory, but the kitchen is deep, okay? Because in the kitchen, think about it. When you have your friends over, when you have your good friends over, when you have your family members over, where do you all congregate? You're not congregating in the living room. You're not congregating at the foyer. You're not congregating at the front door. You're in the kitchen. You're around the table. You're breaking bread. You're having kitchen table talk. You are chopping it up. Okay. You're having a good old time. In the kitchen, this is where you begin to really become vulnerable and take your mask off and allow people to see who you really are. In the kitchen, yes, you're susceptible to getting hurt. Why? Because now you're kind of lowered your defenses. So you're giving people access to the more tender parts of your heart, the more tender parts of you. You're letting them see what it looks like when you're hurt. You're allowing them to see you in the struggle. You're allowing them to see things about you that you wouldn't otherwise allow people to see in any of the other previous mentioned areas. And so that's why the kitchen needs a little bit more time for discussion, because this is a very vulnerable place to be in relationships. In the kitchen, you find out where your triggers are, where your friends' triggers are, where your loved ones' triggers are. You step on some triggers, you might step on some emotional landmines. In the kitchen, you're going to have conflict, you're going to have disagreement, you're going to have difference of opinions, and it's not always going to come out nicely. In the kitchen is where there's going to be a lot of, well, let me, tell you a thing or two. There's going to be some headbutting in the kitchen. And so it's a wonderful place, but it could also be a very volatile place. And if you really think about a kitchen for what it is, there's a lot that can happen in a kitchen. Like fires get started in a kitchen. It gets hot in the kitchen. Why do we have the saying, if you can't beat the heat, get out of the kitchen? So this is really truly where a lot of things go down. Also in the kitchen, you're building intimacy. And as I said, it's because you're taking the mask off. You're allowing people into your heart space. You're allowing them into your heart. You're letting them live and take up residence in your heart, so to speak. It's a very emotional place to be, because not only have you made the investment of time, but now here is where love begins to grow in the kitchen. And if you think about it this way, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to think about being at your mom's kitchen, at your mom's table. Think about your favorite meal that she makes you on your birthday or just because you asked. You see what I'm talking about? The kitchen evokes all of those feelings of warmth. It evokes feelings of attachment. It evokes feelings of connectedness. And so this is a place that should be relatively a safe place. But here's the problem: if you don't have boundaries, it can become a volatile place. If your boundaries are not clearly stated and communicated, like we talked about in the previous video, it could be a place of confusion and it could become a place of misunderstanding, because there's a lot going on in the kitchen that come up. And if, let's say, for example, if I had approached the friend that hurt me, if I had said, but she didn't give me an opportunity to even have that conversation, because when I say she ghosted me and disappeared, like she literally got gone. And so I had to unpack and deal with those hurt feelings alone and by myself. I was never afforded the opportunity to sit down with her and have a very grown up conversation of, girl, why did you do that? Like, why did you disappear on me? Why did you ghost me like that? Why didn't you just tell me that you couldn't make it, or that you were unavailable, or you had this going on? And we did kind of have a very brief in passing moment like that. But again, she was not being forthright with me. I knew that she was not telling me everything. And I realized very quickly that I was not getting anywhere with her. And so I had to make the decision to just let that go. And shame on me for disregarding my intuition and my gut and not using discernment. But also, yay to me for learning a lesson, because that experience really taught me how to properly assess people and how to properly assign people in my life, which I'll get to a little bit later. So in the kitchen, when you don't have good boundaries, when you don't have any boundaries, this is where you have left yourself wide open to lots of unnecessary hurt, lots of frustration, because there's an expectation that is kind of built in the kitchen. But the problem with our expectations is, if I have an expectation of you and I don't let you know what that is, then it doesn't really work. Like if again, it goes back to the example that I gave in the previous video. If my expectation is, I don't want you to call me after 9 o'clock, but I never communicate that to you, I can't really be upset with you. But when you don't have boundaries and you have that expectation and you don't communicate it, and your friend keeps calling you at 10:01, and you know that you told them, I don't answer my phone after 9, the irritation begins to build, kind of like a pressure cooker, depending on the type of person that you are. If you're used to stuffing things down and not really dealing with confrontation, you just keep stuffing it, stuffing it, stuffing it, and then it can't hold anymore, and bam, you have an explosion on your hands. And this is where you will have like the very intense moments of fellowship, is what I like to call them. And so this is what can happen in the kitchen when we are not exercising, implementing, and honoring boundaries. All right. So what is next after the kitchen? It's the family room. And let me tell you, if you thought the kitchen was a serious place, the family room, ooh, child, the family room, it is what it implies. It's family. At this point, by the time you have allowed someone into the family room, they are accustomed to being in your space. They are accustomed to you. They should be knowing you very well, and you should be knowing them very well. Okay? In the family room, there's longevity, because that time and that investment that you have made in the living room and the kitchen only continues to grow and deepen as the relationship progresses. This is where you will find deep, abiding friendship. This is where your friends become the family that you choose. They've seen you at your worst. They've seen you at your best. You've seen them at their worst. You've seen them at their best. You have experienced life together. You have supported one another. You might have fallen out and made back up. You have come to some very strong and ripe disagreements in the family room, but somehow you're able to bring it all back together. In the family room, your core boundaries within the relationship have been kind of set. Now, I want to caution you here too, because remember, I keep saying, if you don't have boundaries, or if your boundaries are lax and somebody is in your family room, here is what that could look like. They are used to you being a certain way. So if that means that you've allowed them to take advantage of you, they've become accustomed to just you stopping what you're doing to tend to them, and then suddenly you take a hard left and you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. They're going to be like, for why? What is the problem? You've always been this way. I've always been able to do this. I've always been, you see what I'm saying? So this is why we need the boundaries. This is why we have to set those boundaries up as early as possible, because if you build an entire relationship based on broken boundaries or non-existent boundaries, then when you do finally wake up and start implementing healthy boundaries, there is going to be a moment of truth and a moment of testing in those relationships that are in the kitchen and the family room. Okay. Ask me how I know. Ask me. Okay. Yeah. Because I've been there, done that. Okay. And so what that looks like is there's a quote going around on social media. I don't know where it originated. I don't know whose words these are. So I'm going to just tell you right now, these are not my words. These are words of somebody who I don't know who originated the quote. I want to be very clear on that, but I want to give credit to whoever said it. And so the phrasing or the wording goes like, some people preferred you, the broken version of you. They preferred you broken. Why? Why did they prefer the broken side of me? Because they got their way every time. Because there was no challenge, there was no accountability, there were no boundaries. So they got what they needed. And so when you finally wake up out of your brokenness and you realize, hey, I have to do some inner work, and you've done that work and you start to implement the necessary boundaries that you need for your life, I want to tell you right now, not everybody is going to be happy about the new version of you. Some people liked you when you were broken because they benefited from your brokenness. And now that you've got some healing and you're starting to put some boundaries around your heart, around your head space, your heart space, and your physical space, they get upset. They don't like that. They don't like to be told no. They don't like to be told, oh, you can no longer go in this room. They don't want to hear that, oh, I can't call you past 9 o'clock. They don't want to hear, what you mean I got to call you before I come to your house? Okay, so like, let's get really real. When we were newlyweds, I come from a family that did not really understand boundaries. Okay. I would dare say my family, we had boundaries, but they were more like rules of engagement. Okay. And growing up in a Caribbean family, for all of my Caribbean people, I love y'all. I love my culture. I, we already know, y'all know what I'm about to say. There's no such thing in a Caribbean household as no. It's do as I say and not as I do, growing up in a Caribbean household. And don't act like it's not the truth. So, what does that look like for me? It looks like I am a newlywed enjoying my newlyweddedness with my husband, and I'm trying to have a romantic dinner, and I hear bing bong, knock, knock at my door. Who is it? It's family. What? What are y'all doing here? Why are you here? What y'all doing? We was in the neighborhood. We coming over. And so now I have to, some of you might be like, well, I wouldn't have opened the door. Yeah, try that in a Caribbean family. Try that in a Caribbean family. When I tell you these jokers will stay at the door, they will walk around your house and look in windows, because why aren't you answering the door? So the easier way is to just answer the door and understand that your romantic dinner is over. You're going to have to try again tomorrow, okay? Because that does not go over in a Caribbean family. It just is not, okay? I tell no lies here. I double down on that. I tell no lies. So here we are, newlyweds. I'm trying to have a romantic dinner with my new husband, and family comes knocking at the door, and I'm wholly pissed. Only the problem is, I I don't feel the freedom to communicate to family. I would have preferred if you called first. You need to call first. It only took a handful of those moments to happen before I finally found my voice to lay down the letter of the law and say, listen, I don't have a problem with you all wanting to visit my house, but I need you to call first. And when I tell you that it was not well received, it wasn't, because they were not accustomed to me having those type of boundaries. They were accustomed to Tamara do this and Tamara does it. So now when Tamara finds a voice and she says, I'm not doing it that way, it's a problem. This is what I talk about when I say some people need time to acclimate to your boundaries. And you have to understand that some people will never acclimate to your boundaries, and they will continue to persist in testing the boundary until you make the decision for them. Am I making sense? Is it all coming together in a nice, beautiful picture? I'm not saying that you're gonna execute these steps perfectly all the time, because Lord knows I didn't. But what I am saying is, if any of what I have said has resonated with you, if you find yourself as that person who is like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live life like this anymore. I want to say no. I want to tell people where they can and cannot go in my head space, in my heart space, in my physical space. First of all, great job. I'm so happy for you. That is a wonderful thing. Kudos to you, because that means that you have been on the struggle bus long enough and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and now you're ready to do something. And that is a beautiful thing. Here's where I want to come alongside you and encourage you and support you. It's not going to be easy, but boy, is it going to be worth it. And I want to just tell you this: the people who truly, truly are supposed to be in your life, the people who are truly meant to be there, yeah, some of them may struggle with your boundaries in the beginning, but eventually they'll acclimate and your relationships with them will be better for it. The people who continue to stay irritated and upset about your boundaries, I would dare say maybe they don't belong in that place of your life. And so there's some reordering that you're going to have to do in your relationship. So remember, I said previously that not everybody should be assigned at the same level within your house, which is you, right? And so you think of it as like a pyramid, right? And at the top of the pyramid, the very pinnacle of the period, that spot should be for God. Okay, because he comes first above anybody, okay, and anything. God first. Second to that would be, if you're married, that's going to be your spouse. Okay, third to that, though, if you have children, that's going to be your children, and then everything else falls underneath that. Okay, so when you're thinking about boundaries and you're thinking about where you assign people in your life, and if you're looking at a pyramid, your friends, your everyday friends, work friends, classmates, those people are going to be somewhere between the lower part of the triangle and maybe just above like the second line of that triangle. Okay, hope I'm making sense here. Your very, very good, treasure, deep, abiding relationships, those are going to be higher on the totem pole. Here's the thing: if you are a people pleaser, and you know that about yourself, there is a very strong tendency for you to place everyone at the same level, because you're constantly trying to make everybody happy. And so everybody gets the 10 spot, but everybody doesn't deserve the 10 spot. And then you find yourself getting hurt all the time because they're not reciprocating. But if a person in your life should really be at a 2 spot and you keep putting them at the 10 spot, and then you create an expectation of them to give you back the 10 that you're giving them, and they're only giving you 2, you're in error, because their capacity is a 2. They can't give you a 10. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can't put a 2 in a 10 spot and expect them to give you 10. They will only ever be able to give you a 2. So the 10 spot is for the people who have displayed, who have shown you, who are reciprocal and are able to give you back what you put into them, and maybe even a little bit more at times. And so this is a hard, hard lesson that I had to learn throughout my 20s and 30s, because I kept getting disappointed in my friendships. I kept getting disappointed in relationship with certain family members. Once I realized that it came down to capacity and that I had to meet people where they were, it made all the difference in how I did my relationships. Now, I'm not saying that it was all perfect and everything was, rainbows and sunshine. No, there was still moments of intense fellowship. There were still disagreements, but at least now I had the awareness of, okay, if this person is a 4, they're not going to understand level 10. They can't give that to me. They don't have the capacity to give that to me. So I have to accept they're a 4. So I meet them at 4. And that is the nature of our relationship. It's a four. There's nothing wrong with four. Four can be healthy, four can be great, four can be beautiful and just as enjoyable. Two can be healthy, two can be great. It can be beautiful and just as enjoyable. The point is, if I go into it understanding this is a two, then I'm not setting us up for failure. I'm not setting myself up for disappointment because it's just going to be a two. And so I have level two people in my life and I enjoy them immensely. And when the time is done, it's done. And I don't have any qualms about it. And listen, there are level one people in my life. And that's a revolving door. They come in, they come out. They come in, they come out. They come in, they come out. And I'm okay with that because not everybody is meant to stay in my life. Not everybody, people are in your life for a time, a reason, and a season. And so not everybody is meant to stay. So the thing that I've had to learn how to do, and the thing that I would love for you to learn how to do, is to, yes, love people. Absolutely. Because the Bible tells us to love one another. And you can love people deeply. You can love them well, but hold them loosely. Love well, hold loosely, because not everybody is meant to stay. One, not everybody wants to be kept. Some people only want you for a season. You got it. Like this is life. This is real life. Some people only want to be connected to you for a season. And so you have to be willing to, when that time comes and you're noticing that someone is no longer interested in being connected to you as deeply as it was before or as you had hoped, you have to be willing to bless them and let them go. I hope that this makes sense. Other thing that I want to say here, in terms of the levels of 10 to 1 or whatever, understand there are some levels that can be revoked. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so if, say for instance, you had somebody at a level 8, a level 7, and something happens within the relationship, there is a violation, there's an egregious violation of a boundary, something happened, and you just can't seem to get it back together. You just can't seem to get it back on track. It's okay to downgrade people. Just because they were at a 878 level doesn't mean that they have to stay there. If they did something that hurt you and they're unapologetic about it and there's no remorse, yeah, your card is getting revoked, right? Because in relationship, it goes both ways. There's a give and a take. There's a push and a pull. That's how it works. And so you can't expect that you're at an 8, but you're treating me at a level 2 and wanting me to be okay with it. And you expect to keep your 8 spot? No, ma'am, Pam, that is not how that works. Whatever level that you assign people at, you have to understand that they have to earn it. They have to earn the right to be there, but they have to also maintain their position to be there. And if someone is no longer interested in maintaining that level, then you have to make that decision and put them down lower, somewhere where there is attainable for them. And again, this is your house, this is your land. It's all about you. So you get to decide who goes where. You get to decide who to place where. And if you have to move them around and shift things around from time to time or for a season, that's okay. You are in control of you. This is how you guard and protect your heart. I hope that this makes sense to you. And so that happens with relationships. They're ending. It's a wrap. It's over. It's done. And it's painful. I understand. And I have been there. I have had to do this multiple times. It does not feel good. Their tears are shed. There is it feels like a divorce. It feels like a breakup. It feels, you go through a grieving process. I get it. I understand. The disappointment is overwhelming depending on who the person is and what they were to you and what they meant to you. I completely understand. And I want to just encourage you, if you're experiencing that type of disengagement in your friendship, I want to let you know that you're going to be okay. It's not going to kill you. You're going to get through this, and grieve the loss of that person in your life. Because here's the truth: you wouldn't be upset if they didn't mean anything to you. If this was somebody at the front door or in the foyer, you wouldn't care. So clearly, if you're having these intense emotions behind losing that relationship or that friend, it's a loss. So you should count it as such. So yes, it's understandable. You're gonna grieve. You're gonna feel like you lost a limb. It's gonna feel that way. It won't feel like that forever. But for the time being, until your heart heals, yes, you're going to hurt. Yes, you might even be angry at certain things. But I just want to encourage you: process those feelings, feel your feelings, because your feelings are valid, but also understand that your feelings are not fact. So you really have to do some soul searching and inner searching as to why that relationship fell apart. Take responsibility for your part in it. Okay, because relationships are 50-50. It takes two to tango. So unless it's like on a rare occasion where it truly is all the other person, 9 times out of 10, you had something to do with it too. And so you have to get very real and honest and radically honest with yourself and accept the parts that you contributed to the downfall of that relationship. If you're able to make amends, that's wonderful. But if you're not, and you have decided that you want to leave, or it's mutually decided that, hey, we're just not going to be friends anymore, grieve the loss, feel the feelings, learn the lessons, pick out the gold. I promise you, there's gold there. That didn't just happen for happenstance. Okay. Yes, it's painful, but some of our most painful lessons in life, or some of our most painful experiences, have brought the most valuable lessons in life. Let me say that again, unstuttered. Okay. Some of our most painful experiences in life have brought the most valuable lessons. So as you are doing the inner work, as your heart is healing, as you're mending from this breakup or the demise of a friendship, take the time to pick out the gold, find the lessons, and learn from it. If it was an issue of you not having any boundaries or not communicating your boundaries, now you know what to do for the next relationship. If it was a communication problem, whatever the issue it was, whatever the error was on your part, whatever the error was on their part, whatever red flags or yellow flags you dismissed and ignored, take note of those things and use them for the next relationship. Because here's what I know: as long as we're living, as long as we're breathing, as long as we are on this earth and have breath in our bodies, we have to be in relationship. We have to be in community. We have to engage with people. We have to talk to people. We're going to experience people. So it's going to come back around. It's a circle. It's the circle of life. It's going to come back around. Use the tools and the lessons that you've learned from the previous experience to build on the next one, so that you don't make the same mistake again, but also so that you understand and get a full understanding of who you are, what you're about, what you require, what you want, and what you don't want out of a relationship. And that's where I'm going to end it. I'm going to end it right there. I hope that you have enjoyed this mini series on boundaries. I hope that I've given you some tools and nuggets that you can use and apply to your life. I hope that you are better leaving out of this conversation than when you came in. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to watch these videos, to sit with me, and to allow me to pour into your life. You know what I'm going to tell you: I love you, you are loved, and God loves you more. Until the next one, bye bye. And don't forget to leave me a comment down in the comment section. Let me know, did this help you? Let me know if you were able to glean from the things that I've shared here. I want to know in the comments. So leave me a comment down below, okay? I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.